Good evening. Thanks for joining us on Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty recover. An intraday trade led by financials and IT stocks. The Nifty Bank hits a record high. The mid-cap index clocks marginal gains. Fears over an AI valuation continues to keep global markets on the edge as investors await Nvidia's earnings. Microsoft joins hands with Nvidia to pour $15 billion into OpenAI's biggest rival, Anthropic, forming a new alliance. The US has now emerged as India's fourth largest crude oil supplier for the second straight month as volumes in November surpass October. Imports from Russia also surge ahead of the November 21 sanctions deadline to wind down purchases. Adani Group wins the bid for Jaiprakash Associates after 90% of the lenders vote in its favour. Sources say Adani's offer of a higher upfront payment tipped the scales in its favour. NARCL alone controls about 86% of the lenders' votes. Shares of online trading platform Groww see some profit booking today after rallying for 5 consecutive sessions since listing. Money Control reports that the surge in the share price is a result of short sellers getting squeezed due to low float. The Supreme Court questions a friendly approach by the CBI and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in probing allegations against Indiabulls housing finance. Also questions double standards by SEBI. The Apex Court pushes the CBI to file an FIR, saying it will strengthen the hand of the Enforcement Directorate. The Supreme Court also strikes down provisions of a central act that limits terms of tribunal members to 4 years, rules that it impacts judicial independence, criticizes the Centre for what it calls legislative overruling of binding judgments, says it's unfortunate that the Centre was not accepting the court's directions. No respite from air pollution in Delhi. The Supreme Court expresses frustration at the lack of action, directs the government to respond, pushes Air Quality Management Authority to consider avoiding sporting activities for school students. President Trump shrugs off the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi and hosts Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House. Trump says the Crown Prince knew nothing about the killing and elevates Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally. At least 14 people killed after Israel launches multiple attacks in southern Lebanon, also undertakes attacks in Gaza. Palestinian authorities claim Israel has carried out nearly 400 attacks in violation of the ceasefire, killing 279 people. Nitish Kumar elected as the leader of the NDA in Bihar. He will take oath as the Chief Minister for a historic 10th time tomorrow. Well, straight to the day's trading action. The Lal Street staged a smart recovery today, led by financials and IT stocks. The Nifty reclaiming 26,000, ending at a 3-week high. The Sensex rose 513 points, ending over 0.5% high. The Nifty Bank, a similar picture there, and 127 points higher there for the mid-cap index. So we saw an intraday recovery coming in. The Nifty Bank hit a record high today for the first time. Mid-caps underperforming the blue chips. Surabhi is here now with the details of the market action. The markets outperformed their global peers, Surabhi.
Well, it was India on top once again, and it's become a bit of a winning streak, though we don't want to jinx it by getting too excited. But yes, the question is, has India emerged, at least for now, as a bit of an anti-AI trade? But, well, today, third day running, we had more evidence of that because the market started on a somber note. We had a very weak handover from Wall Street again. But then the market raised to close at the day's high, at least on the Nifty, gain of about 0.5% coming through. And global equities obviously have been under pressure. There's a lot of nervousness ahead of those Nvidia numbers, which is why when we were trading, Asian markets again resumed their slide and many of them ended almost 0.5% lower. Now let's come to what was the composition of today's rally. So for the large cap space, it was a lot of IT. And PSU banks did very well as well. So let me come to the Nifty gainers. Stocks like Max Healthcare. Max actually was a Nifty winner, biggest mover on the index today. Then the IT brigade, HCL Tech, Infosys, Wipro, TCS, all of these names were doing very well. And it was also a good day for some consumer stocks. So Titan, Nestle, HUL from the large cap space had a good run. Sun Pharma, Cipla, some gainers in pharma. And SBI and ICICI Bank also chipped in. The losers now, Tata Motors, PV, ever since those numbers have come out, the market has just been pushing and punishing that stock because of the growth issues over there. There was Coal India, which was down a bit, Maruti Suzuki and Bajaj Finance seeing some profit taking as well. Now, the mid-cap market today actually underperformed the Nifty. That's what you have to take note of. But it was a day of high drama and very big newsmakers. So let me, call out the 3 that I'm talking about. One is Groww. Finally, after its relentless run, today Groww was down 10%. It spent, the better part of the day on a down circuit with a lot of pending orders at that freeze level. The second, Saman Capital, casualty of court action with the Supreme Court's observations, their order asking investigative agencies to relook at the entire case. That stock was down about 12%. And then KEC International running into some rough weather with Power Grid for future contracts. And Power Grid is one of their big clients. So that was down about 10% as well. Mid-cap IT, however, was completely in a green zone. And look at the kind of buying on mid-cap IT stocks. Persistent, Coforge, L&T Tech up 9%, Hexaware. So IT across the board, large cap and mid-cap did extremely well today.
All right, Subri, many thanks for joining us. That was the market action. From equities to cryptos, where the sell-off continues. Bitcoin briefly touched a 7-month low, slipping below the $90,000 mark. The total market cap of cryptocurrency has fallen by $1 trillion in the last 6 weeks. Bitcoin itself has declined 27% in the same period. And staying with what is happening in cryptocurrencies, it's the larger overarching fear over AI valuations, and that is keeping global markets on the edge. Investors are, of course, waiting Nvidia's earnings later tonight. Microsoft, by the way, has joined hands with Nvidia to pour $15 billion into OpenAI's biggest rival, Anthropic, forming a new alliance. Google has launched Gemini 3 as the battle with ChatGPT intensifies. Rachna standing by with all the AI action. Rachna, let's start with Google. Tell us more about Gemini 3.
That's right. Google's newest model, Gemini 3, is being positioned as a major leap in its AI capabilities with stronger reasoning, deeper multimodal analysis, and long context performance. It's already powering AI mode in search and rolling out across Google's apps and enterprise tools. But this breakthrough comes at a moment when market sentiment around AI is beginning to shift. Some of the biggest names that powered this year's AI rally are now giving back significant value. Nvidia has seen more than $500 billion wiped off its market cap after touching a milestone of $5 trillion. Now, Palantir was also dropped sharply, losing almost $90 billion in November alone. And Alphabet, after months of strong gains, has cooled as well, with estimates suggesting it's down roughly $500 billion from its recent peak as investors reassess just how much optimism is already priced into it. Now, this change in mood is also being echoed from within the industry. And none other than Google CEO Sundar Pichai has publicly now warned that the parts of AI boom are showing elements of irrationality, saying that no company, including Google, is fully insulated if the sector unwinds. Adding to the caution is Michael Burry, the investor who famously predicted the 2008 housing crash, taking large short positions against major AI names. At the same time, the competitive landscape is being reshaped as well by one of the biggest AI alliances announced this year. OpenAI's largest investor, Microsoft, is now joining hands with the ChatGPT maker's biggest rival, Anthropic. Microsoft and Nvidia and Anthropic, they've signed a three-way partnership in a deal that goes far beyond a standard cloud deal. Anthropic has committed up to $30 billion of compute on Microsoft's Azure cloud. Nvidia is investing up to $10 billion into the company, and Microsoft is adding up to $5 billion of its own. The agreement also includes the option for Anthropic to scale to 1 gigawatt of additional compute capacity that will be one of the largest single AI infrastructure commitments on record. As Wall Street now turns cautious on the AI story, big tech is forging several partnerships where rivals are joining hands, hoping to maintain the growth momentum. Back to you.
Well, plenty that's moving in the AI ecosystem. Many thanks, Rachna, for joining us. And Elon Musk's artificial intelligence firm XAI is in advanced talks to raise $15 billion in fresh equity at a valuation of $230 billion. Reports suggest that the terms of the new fundraise were disclosed to investors by Musk's wealth manager Jared Birchall last night. The $230 billion valuation is more than a 100% increase from the $113 billion figure which was disclosed in March. On to commodities. Prices of crude oil easing as rising U.S. inventory sparked concerns of an oversupply. However, the declines were limited by secondary sanctions on Russian crude buyers. Investors are also waiting for OPEC Plus decision on its supply policy when it meets on the 30th of November. And staying with oil, the U.S. is now India's fourth largest crude oil supplier. This for the second straight month as volumes in November surpassed October. However, imports from Russia also surged ahead of that November 21st sanctions deadline to wind down purchases. Sapna is here with the details. Sapna, take us through India's crude oil imports.
Well, as per the latest data from Kepler, clearly, our crude imports from the US have really picked up pace. So for 2 straight months back to back, October and between 1st and 18th November, the crude imports, the volumes from the US are anywhere between 500,000 to 0.6 million barrels a day. This is quite a jump in comparison to the earlier months of the current calendar year, where it was around 0.2 million to 0.3 million barrels per day. So that trend is noteworthy. Basically, US is now the fourth largest crude oil supplier to India. This position had been occupied by the United Arab Emirates since a very long time. UAE's position now goes down in comparison to US. Of course, Iraq and the Saudis, they continue to be firmly entrenched as the second and the third largest crude suppliers to India. But of course, the first spot still goes to Russia. Around 1.9 million barrels per day has been imported between 1st and 18 November. Of course, post 21st November, everyone expects this to kind of peter off. The Russian arrivals are likely to come down dramatically.
All right, many thanks. Sapna. Russia's offered to provide technology transfer of its fifth-generation Sukhoi Su-57 stealth fighter aircraft to India. The Russian government-owned defense conglomerate says all demands from India regarding the fighter jet are, and I quote, completely acceptable. This also comes amid several meetings between officials of both countries, including one between External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Shares of online trading platform Groww hit a 10% lower circuit today after nearly doubling from the IPO price in the last 5 sessions. As per a money control report, 30 lakh shares of the company had moved into the auction window. The report suggests that many short sellers misjudged the stock's sharp post-listing rally. They sold shares they did not hold. They expected the rally to fizzle, which would enable them to buy the shares back at lower prices the same day. But that was not the case, and short sellers were caught off guard. They now face hefty penalties in the range of 20 to 25%. And more listings. Tenco Clean Air made a strong stock market debut with the shares listing at a 27% premium to the IPO price. The 3,600 crore rupee issue was subscribed 59 times in the primary market. The company captured a market cap of close to 20,000 crore rupees on day one. Adani Group has won the bids for Jaiprakash Associates after 90% of the lenders voted in its favour. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that Adani's offer of a higher upfront payment tipped the scales in its favour. Ritu joins us now with more. Ritu, Adani Group having the last say at the end of what has been a long-drawn resolution proceedings.
Well, yes, a big development in the long-drawn resolution process of Jaiprakash Associates, and it looks like the race has a clear winner, with sources telling us that 90% of the lenders that were led by the National Asset Reconstruction Company, or NARCL, voted in favour of Adani Group's bid to take over the company. Now, here's the key factor. NARCL alone controls about 86% of the voting share, so their decision virtually sealed the outcome. Now, a few of the lenders, including SBI and ICICI Bank, that now hold less than 3% of the total vote because they've sold most of the exposure to NARCL, they chose to abstain, but that didn't really impact the final direction of the vote. Now, why did Adani win the lenders over despite Vedanta offering more money overall? Well, sources say the higher upfront payment in the Adani proposal was the clincher. As we've been reporting, Adani offered a total of 13,500 crores, which included about 6,005 crores as upfront payment to the lenders and another 6,700 odd crores after 2 years, meaning in net present value, their offer was evaluated at around 12,000 crore rupees. Vedanta, on the other hand, had put forward a larger overall offer during the Swiss challenge process of roughly 16,000 crores, with only 3,770 crores upfront and the rest only after 5 years. So Vedanta did, we understand, attempt to restructure the payment schedule in order to increase the upfront portion to win over the lenders, but sources say the COC and the resolution professional did not accept the change because the Swiss challenge window had already closed. Now, with the voting now complete, lenders are going to issue a letter of intent to Adani Group, and then the resolution professional is going to file this approved plan with the NCLT seeking their formal approval. But keep in mind, JP Associates is facing claims of more than 57,000 crores under the IBC. So even with this offer, lenders are staring at a steep haircut.
All right. Many thanks, Ritu, for joining us. So Adani is the winner as far as JP Associates is concerned. Up next, the Apex Court questions, and I quote, the friendly approach by the CBI and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in probing allegations against Indiabulls Housing Finance. Also questions SEBI's quote-unquote double standards. That and more when we return. The Supreme Court has questioned, and I quote, the friendly approach by the CBI and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in probing allegations against erstwhile Indiabulls Housing Finance, which is now called Sammaan Capital. Shares of Sammaan Capital hit the lower circuit in trade after the apex court pushed the CBI to file an FIR saying it will strengthen the hand of the Enforcement Directorate. The court also questioned what it called, I quote again, double standards by market regulator SEBI. Now, Ashmit is here with more details. Ashmit, why has the Supreme Court decided to take this matter up? Who filed the PIL? Where does this now leave the issue of Sammaan Capital?
Well, this issue, in fact, travels back to 2019. That's pre-COVID. This PIL was filed by an NGO called Citizens Whistleblower Forum. This, as one of the members, Prashant Bhushan is one of the members. He was the one who was arguing today. And originally, when this case was filed before the Delhi High Court, it went through the motions. All the parties were made to hear, but it was dismissed. And it is an appeal of that Delhi High Court order that was today listed for hearing before the apex court. The concern that was raised is that Sameer Gehlot, the erstwhile backer, the founder of IHFL, Indiabulls Housing Finance Limited, has fled the country. And on that argument is where there was a need felt. There was a argument made for a thorough investigation. Now, that demand, in fact, is what elicited sharp language from the apex court when it spoke of individual investigators. First, the CBI, the Supreme Court, in fact, bench headed by Justice Suryakant, not happy with the conduct of the CBI, questioning what it called was a friendly approach of the CBI, nudging it towards filing an FIR, saying that if CBI were to go ahead, file an FIR, that will strengthen ED's investigations. ED is the one that has been briefing the apex court as far as ongoing investigations are concerned. As far as ED's conduct itself is concerned, well, the ED clarified that, look, we've done our bit. We've reached out and filed complaints before the EOWs of Delhi and Mumbai, but those complaints haven't been taken cognizance of. And to that end, the ED said that we're open to hosting a meeting of all stakeholders put together where we can assess where the gaps in the investigation are and what needs to be done. And they proposed a meeting, including the SFIO, the CBI, ED, of course, as well as SEBI. And that is where SEBI appeared to be a little hesitant, which again invited sharp comments from the apex court, saying that this appears to be a double standards. Again, not understanding, the Supreme Court said, not understanding this hesitancy being shown by the market regulator, going on to say that when it comes on the issue of seizing assets or taking over property, SEBI is quick to act. But here, where there is a need felt for an investigation, SEBI appears to be hesitant, especially with the Supreme Court giving it a nod, giving it the jurisdiction to go ahead and investigate. So clearly at this point, seeking more scrutiny, that's the broad message that the apex court is sending out. But at the same time, important to clarify that no observations or findings were made on the merits of the case. Supreme Court only saying there's a need for more investigation, and to that end has sought for a status report. The next hearing in this case will be on December 17th.
जहाँ तक सम्मान कैपिटल का रास्ता है, तो ये पब्लिक लिस्टेड कंपनी है, ये डिफॉल्टर नहीं है किसी भी सर्कमस्टांस में, किसी का पैसा देना नहीं है, कोई मुकदमा या कोई इन्वेस्टिगेशन किसी भी अथॉरिटी की, सीबीआई, ईडी, सेबी, आरबीआई, कुछ भी पेंडिंग नहीं है। नाउ ये पिटीशन पहले हाईकोर्ट में भी दायर हुई थी, सारी अथॉरिटीज़ ने सब कुछ देखा और कोई गलत काम की आदेशा नहीं दिखाया गया।
Well, that's Mukul Rohtgi there, the counsel for Sammaan Capital. The Supreme Court, meanwhile, has struck down the provisions of the Tribunal's Reforms Act relating to the appointments, tenure and service conditions of the members of various tribunals. The court ruled that certain provisions impact judicial independence. A bench led by the Chief Justice B.R. Gawai censured the government for trying to override the apex court's judgment by enacting a law. And more from the court, the Supreme Court has expressed frustration that the government takes no action on air pollution as it peaks in Delhi. The apex court also pushed the Air Quality Management Authority to consider avoiding sporting activities for school students. Remember, school students have moved the courts now. The government was also directed to respond to concerns on missing data and accuracy of AQI monitors. This after law firm Amicus flagged the use of sprinklers around AQI monitoring stations. In international news, President Trump hosted Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House for a dinner last evening. Trump greeted the prince on his arrival with a group of fighter jets flying over. Before the two leaders walked inside, the Crown Prince announced that Saudi will raise its planned investments in America to $1 trillion. They had announced $600 billion of investments when Trump visited the kingdom in May. President Trump also elevated Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally. This was the Crown Prince's first visit to America since the 2018 killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi by Saudi agents in Istanbul. President Trump shrugged off the killing, saying that Salman knew nothing about it.
As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or not in a legal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc. in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
Well, MBS was not the only high-profile guest at the White House. Cristiano Ronaldo, who currently plays for a club in Saudi Arabia and is the world's only billionaire footballer, was also present at the dinner table. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, who had a controversial 9-month stint in the Trump administration, was present at the state dinner as well. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment with more.